yesterday. That last part, man, my phone was blowing up when the governor put life is fluid because it was just philosophical. And I know she was applying it to the situation. So let's go to the phones, Bree. We get the oversight on the legislative for the legislative committee on procurement. Senator Sabina Perez. Well, aren't you the talk of the island this morning, Senator?
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
First, we just want to...
Did you get any sleep?
Yeah.
What time did you sleep?
You know, it was really hard to be honest. I've been preparing for this for a while, and there's so much information that came out of that oversight. I'm still trying to process it and organize and move forward from here. So I'm already introducing. I would like to introduce the bill today regarding it. Working on that right now. But in regards to what was played, I just want to be clear that, procuring authority is very specific. I mean, if you think about the analogy of, police officers who have the authority to arrest, not everybody can arrest. You have to be given that authority to do so. The same thing goes with procurement. And the law specifies, who has the authority. And, one of the things in the oversight was trying to figure out under what authority was procurement done. And in light of the evoking of the Emergency Powers Act. And so can arrest. You have to be... in looking at the Emergency Powers Act, there is very little mention of procuring authority. So to be able to derive that from that act, is questionable. I think, also the comments about suspension of rules. Suspension is not equivalent to the authority to procure. Those are two different things. And so that's another thing that needs to be addressed. I think the other thing that came out of the oversight hearing was this idea of emergency purchases. So the fact of, as you saw in the oversight hearing yesterday, that the Attorney General could not answer the question of what is the definition of purchase. And if there isn't a definition, then the law doesn't exist. And since 1983, I believe, the governor was the procurement powers were taken away from the governor and was put under the legislature to define by statute, by law. And so that's what part of the thing that I was looking at is, what is the authority, procuring authority, under what authority they were authorized to procure. And to me, that still needs to be looked at and addressed to make sure that it's clear, because right now there seems to be some sort of maybe perhaps misunderstanding of what the Emergency Powers Act provides as far as authority to procure, and the fact that if they're utilizing the term purchases is very questionable, and I would like to pursue.
What is that? That sounded kind of different.
So basically,
it wasn't a procurement; it was an emergency purchase.
And they didn't use that term until recently.
Right. So that's new to me, and it's not in the law. It does not state it in the law. There's no definition in the law. And
what about federal law?
Well, So purchasing, but when you're dealing with government funds, you have to follow procurement. There are guidelines for procurement, and the purchase is the act of transacting that exchange. But to have the accountability that's needed for the use of government funds, procurement process, the procurement rules have to be followed.
You really seemed like you were holding back when you tried to question the Assistant Attorney General, because it seemed like you were trying to get some answers, and it was like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
Or did you feel like she was talking like you were beneath her?
I was basically trying to get interpretation. I think that's what every lawyer should be able to provide, general interpretation, and I couldn't get a straight answer. And to me, that's something that, if we really want to hold up stand-up procurement, there should be clear guidelines. And, it should be coming from, various members in the procurement network,
Right.
and especially in the Office of Attorney General.
Yeah.
And I think that's moving forward. I think we really, we need to, like as Mary Rose was saying, we need to get together and figure out how we're going to do this in a more of a coordinated fashion.
Mm-hmm. Why wasn't Tim Uggan invited, or was he invited to the Homeland Security Advisor to this oversight?
Yeah, so I wasn't focused on him, partly because I think Charles Esteves was more in the limelight. But it wasn't. I apologize if I left out anybody, and so I do apologize to Mary Rose that she was not included. It wasn't because I was trying to omit her. It's just
right.
yeah.
Well, we're glad you brought her on, because she was like a living, breathing fact check.
Yeah, absolutely, and I would definitely highly recommend her for this panel to help reform. I mean, I think it'd be great to have her, Attorney Brown, and everybody in the GSA, all the members of the procurement family to come together and work out how to move forward and reform procurement. I think there's a lot of great expertise in our community. It's just about bringing them together, and my commitment is to that, to make some change.
I thought you were very methodical in your approach. I totally saw what you were doing, and I got to admit, there was a stretch in there where before the hearing, I just wasn't confident that you were going to get the people sat down in front of you that you could ask the questions to. So I guess first thing I want to get from you is your reaction to the Office of the Governor, the letter that they'd sent. And I know you've probably seen it now. You indicated during the oversight hearing that you didn't have a copy of it. But the tone of this letter from the governor, where she said that she would not be waiving her executive privilege, and she also had said, I'm not sure what the purpose of this hearing is. I've already talked about this so many times in the public, in the media, all the information's out there. Why do we got to be questioned? I mean, that was pretty much the tone of it. And then to go into this hearing, were you blindsided at all when you tried to ask the governor's legal counsel, Attorney Hai Hun, some questions, and he said, I provided a statement, and I'm just going to read this statement?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I didn't expect he was coming, so that was a pleasant surprise that they were able to come. And so, yeah, to have that statement sent right before the oversight, I was in transition, and so I wasn't aware. Yeah, I guess it was glad that they were there, but I guess that in some ways, I feel that in response to the statements, I think, I feel like we need to communicate better, that this basically, I think that, procurement law needs to be followed.
Okay, so was procurement law followed with the procurement or emergency purchase or whatever this was with the initial round of the quarantine facilities?
Well, I think I feel like we're in regards to that. I feel that they're speaking in terms of an Emergency Powers Act, and I'm speaking in terms of procurement law, and so we're not communicating in that way. But and so their interpretation is saying we have all the procurement authority under Emergency Powers Act. But
there was something that you brought up though towards the end, and that was with Linda and Pinko DeNorsi. I think it was you about that Emergency Powers Act, that the Public Health Authority would be Public Health Director Linda and Pinko DeNorsi, that she should be in charge of this, and that procurement authority would fall under her.
Yeah, I think that's where the miscommunication is that they're holding all their power on that act. And I think, I'm saying, no, that's not it. You have to follow procurement law. So I feel there has to be, some sort of meeting of the minds on, how these two acts interact. And the idea that purchases is not defined, I think that needs to be questioned. And again, it's like like she said, every lawyer has their own interpretation. Unfortunately, we're not coming together on a common ground, and I think that needs to be really worked out.
But isn't it kind of surprising that we argue that there are these two acts that are in the air, this one law and this one law, but when the second round comes along to procure these these quarantine facilities, we're doing what we all thought you should have been doing in the beginning.
Right.
Right. And that's for the federal, that you have a good point, because the federal law states that you have to follow local law. And so this whole idea of emergency purchases is not defined.
They just made it up? Are you saying they just kind of...
I'm just saying it's not properly defined. Well, yeah, from my look of things, it's not defined, so it's not, there's no statutory authority involved in that. So, but I think that's where the problem lies, is if federal law is requiring local law to be followed, and then you have this interpretation that this Emergency Powers Act is giving you the authority, are we willing to risk losing federal dollars if there is an issue about the procurement authority under the Emergency Powers Act? So I think, to play it conservatively, I think it's best to follow Chapter 5, which is the procurement law, versus trying to create this new system that is not well defined.
Yeah.
I think just in being more, and also accountability. Like, we have this law that's been in existence longer than the Emergency Powers Act, and it's been utilized, and more people know how to use it. Why can't we just rely on that?
Mm-hmm. Why wasn't attorney
with the little tweaks, right? Perhaps wherever the federal law and the local law don't match, let's figure out a way how we can make those two a little bit more aligned. So that's, to me, that seems like the logical choice, rather than to rely on the Emergency Powers Act, which is not defined as far as procurement authority, or not well defined.
Why wasn't the Attorney General there, leaving Camacho?
So I would have to check in with my office what the response was, but I can't say.
Were you surprised that I know you started off your questioning, you wanted to get questions from Jessica Toft, but then she said she was protected by the attorney-client privilege. Were you anticipating that, or did you really think that you were going to get answers, or did you even know that the AG's office was representing the governor?
I was aware of the client attorney privilege. I guess in hindsight, I could have required that, or asked that they basically waive that.
Right.
And I think, I was hoping to get at least answers regarding general interpretations of laws.
That was just.
Practice it.
I felt like they were disrespecting you and the senators and I don't know. I hate to say I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not. But I feel like they were overusing the attorney-client privilege thing, and I felt like it was their tone was almost adversarial.
It's basically, it definitely undermines the oversight, because we're trying to fact find, right? We're trying to get to the matter and understand what happened and how we can move forward. So, and to also give the public some confidence about the system. And, from what I could see, the procurement system, there was a breakdown. And perhaps it's, obviously people are working, there's no coordinated, plan. That's the other thing that needs to be addressed is under the Emergency Powers Act, there has to be a commission, which hasn't been. I'm not aware of any reports or updates to it, but I feel that we've kind of deviated from the purpose and the what was prescribed by the Emergency Powers Act.
Who was in charge? I know you were asking this question quite a few times last night. So at the end of this oversight hearing, who do you believe was in charge of this emergency procurement or emergency purchases?
Well, if you hear the testimony from Director DeNorsi, she was basically in charge with her own agency. So that's a very good question: is who is in charge? And
Did you get that answer? Do you feel like after it was done, you got that answer?
basically, it doesn't seem very. It doesn't seem like there is one point person, from what I could tell.
Right,
or at least there wasn't. If there was, it should have been more coordinated.
Right, but what did you make of the legal counsel? What did he say, Bree? It was something like, I don't know if you would call me the lead on it, but then Linda Pinko Denorsi had said when she was asked that Attorney Haihun, the governor's legal counsel, was in charge. Those were her words, I believe, were that he was in charge of it. And
yeah.
we've all read the same email, Senator. I mean, a lot of them are coming from the governor's legal counsel. So I wasn't sure if he was trying to like step away from it. It seemed like nobody wanted to be involved with this, and then it was like not involved attorney-client privilege. I mean, it was
seemed
like 3
though
hours.
that he became involved after the HSA and the COS. I'm not sure what they did, but he came in after.
I just want to say, Bree, that he was clearly contradicted several times in that hearing. So for him to throw the former chief of staff Tony Babauta and Tim Uggan under the bus, I would want to find out what they have to say about it. Because if this guy was contradicted by Mary Rhodes, he was contradicted by Linda Pinko Denorsi, I wonder what Tony Babauta and Tim Uggan are going to have to say. But, Tim Uggan's on leave and...
and Tony resigned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little bit.
Did you get that interpretation that Tim Uggan had dropped the ball? Based on that statement?
I would like to follow up any questions to him without him being present. I can't say. I can't make any determination on that.
Mm-hmm.
But in regards to the lead, I think it's really unfortunate that with the Linda Denorsi's testimony that she can't even get funds certified for her own project. And what's the whole point of the Emergency Health Powers Act is to ensure that you have this lead person directing, the response in a way and to address the pandemic. And so I think that's one of the issues with the procurement is it's in disarray in a way that it's not really, focusing on, the needs as she sees it. So that's one of the things that I would like to address is, how do we reorganize this network to ensure that the emergency powers is held up in addition to the procurement law.
Right. But Senator, I mean, when I asked the governor yesterday if she was going to use her emergency superpowers to pay the clinics, she said she doesn't have to. And I think it's clear that now that we're doing things by the book, I'm wondering, are they even going to use those superpowers anymore? Because like you said, the whole process is questionable at best. And so they've, to me, in my opinion, by posting those memorandums, by ordering Ed Byrne to pay the people, I believe that they've closed the book on the usage of the emergency special powers, because this is a Pandora's box that they're just trying to stuff everything back into right now. And you guys at the legislature are trying to flip the lid off.
Yeah, I need to get more information on that. But I feel that this is just one aspect. The quarantine facilities is just one aspect. It was meant to be as a case study to look at the broader impact. So apparently there is more to uncover. And I think more importantly, it's like how I guess that's the problem. When you use a law that is not well defined for procurement, you're going to run into problems with procurement.
So you mentioned when we first started this interview that you were planning to introduce a bill today. What exactly is this bill about?
Well, I would like to get basically it's an amendment of procurement law that so there's an advisory council and just having the members from the oversight to work together. Of course, this doesn't have to be legislated. It could be done immediately, but I would like to, in the long term, I think procurement is not going to be fixed right away. I mean, unless we put all our efforts, but I know there is a deadline in regards to these federal funds. I think there's a deadline, or it expires by the end of this year But I think the sooner that we can get these minds together, would highly recommend Mary Rhodes, Attorney Brown, to be a part of this panel, this advisory council, along with the other officials associated with procurement from the OPA, Attorney General, Chief Procurement Officer, DPW. So all these need to come together and bring their what they have to offer. Because I was really impressed with Mary Rhodes' testimony yesterday. The fact that she knows federal contracting, and considering that a lot of these federal funds are being used, it'd be great to have her and her wealth of knowledge to be on this council.
What about the AG's office? They seem to be fully aware of federal laws. That was kind of expressed.
They're already in the law. They're part of it. Yeah, and they are part of the procurement regime.
Right.
For Guam.
Senator, so we've had the first oversight. I know you had indicated that you might want to do another one. First of all, is that a reality, or are you still figuring that out?
Yeah, I would like to move on, focus on the positive of change, reform. I would like to focus on reforming, and if need be, we can have more either info briefings, perhaps, or if an oversight is needed. I'm open to keeping this momentum going.
Right. Do you feel like we need to get Tim Uggan down there in the Zoom at the legislature to answer questions?
I would right at this time. I perhaps I could send him an email posing questions. Yeah, that might be the quicker way. Hey, considering I might be bumped again.
I want to ask you, Senator Theresa Law, you had a line of questioning that I thought was crucial when she had brought up the conflict of interest now that the Attorney General's office is going to have, and the wild chance, some might say the unrealistic chance, that they're going to review this process like their job is supposed to be. There was so much. It was so interesting to me that Assistant Attorney General Jessica Toft was just hell-bent on protecting this attorney-client privilege. And I was like, wait a minute, aren't you guys supposed to figure out what's legal and what's not legal? Or are you just the governor's attorney? Because I thought that was your job, was to be independent, impartial, a check and balance. So
and that's something that's interesting to see. I think, everybody in this procurement process could have done something, right? They were in the know to some extent. And that's, what are the checks and balances? And, perhaps maybe is there something that we need to change to ensure their checks and balances are there? And so that's why the oversight is important. Is the one of it's this is part of the checks and balances of the whole procurement system. But if it could have been addressed much sooner, if there was some sort of checks and balances much earlier, that's more that's preferable. Yeah. So I think that's an important question that needs to be addressed. Is what needs to be done to ensure that there's proper checks and balances. Right. If you are involved in this procurement, but then who's going to be monitoring it and ensuring that there is the process is followed in a way and properly. Yeah, and I really want to give credit because with checks and balances, I think that the classified employees who were involved with this process, and even the unclassified ones like Linda, they stuck to their guns. And I feel like they, in a way, were like a check and balance because they said, we're not going to sign it. Yeah, and that's a big part of why we're here today. So I kind of want to recognize them because I'm pretty sure they were under some pressure to just rubber stamp this stuff, and they didn't do it. And I think that, again, that really needs to be recognized in all this, is that we have people who it's their job to do these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And when it was brought to them from an outside lane, they said, no, we're not going to, no, that's so key here. Right. Yeah. Definitely. Kudos to Linda DeNorsi for that and all that she's been doing. It's a Herculean task that she's accomplishing right now. So I definitely kudos to her. Yeah, especially having to deal with all this political nonsense like Tony Babauta spending the night at Pacstar or Digital Signature. It's really unfair because Linda is the public health authority,
leading the COVID-19, and they keep involving her and besmirching her with all this stuff, and then she's got to take time off of fighting COVID-19 to answer the media's questions about the use of her digital signature, to answer the media's questions about the procurement process. And I think it's rather unfortunate that whatever is going on at Adelut reaches to her, and she's got to be dragged down into this. And I feel like everything that she's said on the record, it's been consistent. I told her, hey, good job at the hearing. She said, Chris, I just told the truth. And you had one point where, like, the policy director, Carlo Branch, tried to interrupt and speak for her, which I thought was pretty interesting, because it seems like everybody wants to speak for Linda, but Linda's saying what she says, and she continues to say the same thing. Well, Senator, anything else in closing you want to add here?
Yeah, I just thank you for this opportunity. I think, I would like to basically extend, maybe perhaps, engage the, perhaps if we can convene convene the advisory council. I would recommend convening the advisory council, as soon as possible to kind of work through these issues. And I do hope to can continue the conversation so that we can move forward.
Right.
Right.
Okay, well, keep us posted
Thanks,
on
Senator.
your bill and any other developments. If you get Tim Uggan to answer his phone while he's on leave, let us know, because we definitely want to hear what he has to say.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Wash your hands. At 9:53. Hey, we're going to take a break, and it is Friday. So we're going to end this week on a good note. That's coming up right here on Containing COVID, the KUAM News Takeover of Guam's favorite Good Morning.
Keeping you informed.